Redmond, my man, welcome to the show. How we doing tonight?
Real good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a blessing. We love talking baseball. We love talking Tennessee baseball. Man, you got a heck of a career and story to talk about, and so we're going to get into it. But man, we got to start with what's going on recently, man. Seeing that you just got married, and I got a question for you, real quick. Did you by chance get married on a Saturday?
No, Friday night. I wasn't gonna make that rookie mistake.
Okay.
It worked out perfect. You had the game on, had the wedding on Friday. Everybody comes in Saturday. Everybody gets to go to Kentucky game. I had it planned out before.
All right, so you see Randy shaking his head on the rookie mistake. See, I didn't exactly make a rookie mistake. I made a selfish mistake. LSU is my team. They played on Thursday night that week, so I wasn't really worried about anybody else's team. Randy, however, Tennessee was playing Florida on the Saturday of my wedding. And, I thought I might get unfriended, man. 20 years in the books, and I think he was thinking about cutting me off for making that rookie mistake that you talked about. So I just want to make sure that you didn't do that. So smart man doing it on a Friday. Then y'all went to the game on Saturday, took care of business. I love it. So, with that, man, you got fall ball going on with baseball, all this crazy football stuff. You get married. Like, have you even had time to do a honeymoon or anything?
No, that's this weekend. We just ended up our orange and white series. Coach the white team. We get the dub in the series, which was a pretty cool experience for me. But we're gonna head out here in a couple days, actually, going down to Orlando for a little bit, and then heading down to the Keys.
Going down to Orlando, that's Daniel's neck of the woods. Are you hitting Disney or just Orlando in general?
Oh, Disney. That was the big part of it. We're gonna go down for 2 days, and that was something when we first started dating we wanted to do, and something she always talked about. So it was a little getaway for both of us, and then head down a little more south, and hopefully for me do a little deep sea fishing.
Well, oh, no doubt. Got to do the deep sea fishing. We do that when we go down there as well. But on the Disney thing, let me tell you, is all of us having kids and we've been with or without kids. Hey, man, it's some people think Disney is just for the kids. It's amazing how much fun the two of you are gonna have, man. When you kind of get to do your own thing, you ain't got to go where they want to go. Like in Epcot, man, you'll love it. Try all the food. That's my recommendation. I'm sure Randy and Daniel got recommendations. Randy. What were you there 2 weeks ago?
A month ago, actually, to the day.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
you do it. You're doing it right. Disney's a good choice. I like it.
I'm gonna have to get with you afterwards, Randy.
I got you,
Look,
man. DB's your resident Disney expert. He lives like an hour from it.
look, look, Redmond. I got one question about Disney. What are your shirts look like? What do they say? 'Cause you're not gonna fool me. I know y'all got shirts already, and I know they got
Yeah, the
something
only thing
something silly on it.
she said she wants the ears, and that's it. And I was like, I'm fine with that. The
Hold up,
ears.
hold up. You're not gonna have like a hubby and a wifey, all that kind of jazz. Come on, man.
Oh my goodness, she might surprise me with something when I get down there, but we'll see. It'll be one of those things played by ear.
I got you, man. No matter where you go, you'll have a good time. There'll be plenty of things to do, plenty of things to see, drink, ride, eat, you name it. But um talk to me a little bit. Let's go back to the beginning. Tell me a little bit about where you're from.
So I grew up just outside of Knoxville. It's a town called Alcoa. You ever fly into Knoxville, you fly into Alcoa. And if you know anything about Alcoa, we're a football school. I think it's like 16 out of the last 22 state championships in football, something crazy like that. So powerhouse football. Terrible at baseball. Always been really bad at baseball. That was the bad thing about it. We've had some decent talent come out, but never any winning seasons. But that was the thing. I always loved baseball, hated playing football, loved watching football. I was always too small, but I went to a high school that was super competitive in the athletic department and kind of pushed me to kind of be a little bit better than I should have been.
So let's go back even further though, before high school. Obviously we always talk about the family dynamics and brothers and sisters. Did you have any brothers and sisters growing up? Was mom and dad both in the house? What were the dynamics like?
Yeah, so I had mom, dad always around, and then I had an older brother and a younger brother. And I think my older brother was the whole reason I got into playing baseball and sports. He when he was 6 years old, I was three, and he was putting sweatbands on me to go try out for basketball and stuff. Or just I was decked out like gear out out of everything. So, and it was just one of those things. Sports were what we loved to do growing up.
All right. So that leads me to my most important question. Obviously, three boys, relatively close in age. Who's winning the fights? 'Cause I know y'all. I know y'all are fighting. Who's winning?
Man, is this thing going to be aired? I don't know if I want to tell them all the secrets. So, to be honest, when we were little, it was my older brother. He beat us up, and probably now it's my younger brother. My younger brother, we still get not scrap, but we still get into it a little bit, and he's a lot bigger and stronger than us. He hits the gym all the time, and we just are. Ever since I stopped playing, it's like a maybe once, twice a week kind of deal.
Was
So,
it that pass down effect where big brother got you and then you got little brother?
and then little brother's seeking revenge the rest of the time. So
That's how it works, man. But you can tell them you're wiry. You ever seen the replacements?
yes.
Yeah, that's you, man. You're wiry. But I mean, obviously growing up, two siblings, two brothers, the competitive nature I'm sure is all over the place. That you mentioned being basically a walking Evo shield, a walking, advertisement with all the gear that they had strapped on you. But outside of the home, like who are you watching like professionally? What athletes are inspiring you? Who are you trying to mold your game after?
Well, it's kind of crazy. So when I was about 10 years old, I started going to pitching coach named Doug Locklear, who was with the Padres and all this stuff. He was good family friends. I played with his son and stuff. The first pitcher I ever tried to model was Sandy Koufax. Didn't know anything about him. I just remember seeing pictures of him. He's a lefty, really good stuff. And all I knew he's left-handed and threw pretty hard. Played for the Dodgers. That's all I knew when I was about 10, and that's kind of who I just idolized for forever. I'd have Sandy Koufax pictures in my room. I'd have all the ones of him holding the balls with the circles on them, all that, and that was my guy. That's kind of who I idolized as a kid, and kind of who I wanted to be. And that was before I knew nothing. I just knew he was a professional baseball player, and I wanted to be like him.
Man, you're an old soul. Like, what did people are like? Who is your favorite player? No, man, it's obviously being on the bump. You look back in history, and obviously the stats and the numbers don't lie, man. He's in the record books for a reason. But as you get older, as you find your niche, your groove, you start playing travel ball for Diamond Baseball of the Simcox Academy. You were in the 2015 Perfect Game WWBA National Championships. That's the Wood Bat Association. Tell me a little bit about the importance of travel ball, because we've had a lot of guys on and they all have varying, perspectives and importance to travel ball and their success. But, tell me a little bit about the importance of travel ball and how it affected you.
Yeah, travel ball was huge. I tell kind of everybody that's getting recruited now, people I know, recruiting just being in the right place at the right time in front of the right people. It's kind of crazy. I mean, you have your guys that your Ben Joyces, your people like that. They throw 100 and at Walter State, something like that, and they stick out. But if you're a guy like me, I mean, I was middle of the pack. I was a lefty. I was 85, 87. I had a good changeup. We had a good command, but it wasn't like it's not something that is projectable. So you want people to look at you for other stuff. So for me, travel ball was huge because I got to go out and I got to pitch against guys. We had two guys that ended up coming to UT. One was Zach Lingenfelder, one was Andrew Schultz. They both played for Team Elite, and we played them over at Coastal. And I ended up getting to pitch against them. And luckily enough, Coach Serrano, who is the coach at UT before Vitello, was there. And watching them throw, ended up watching me throw, and really liked kind of my competitiveness and my grit on the mound. I ended up getting the win and beating both of those guys who pitched I think Lingo pitched 3, Schultz pitched 4 in a 7-inning game. And I ended up pitching all 7 and getting the win. I think that was kind of just one of those things, being in the right place at the right time in front of the right people.
So, you mentioned, Alcoa High School is where you went. You didn't say a whole lot about the baseball program being prestigious or anything, but you did mention that, every so often they had a couple guys coming out of there. my guess is that you were one of those guys. You were a 4-year letterman, you're a senior captain, you earned, 3 first team all county and all district accolades. You were named all state two-way player, listed as the number 5 lefty pitcher in the state of Tennessee, a top 200 lefty pitcher. According to Perfect Game in 2016, you threw a no-hitter to seal a 3-0 victory over Catholic High School in May of that year, as well as you recorded a season high of 14 strikeouts as part of a complete game effort in a 4-0 win over Catholic High School. Talk to me about that high school career. Tell me a little bit about, those games that were mentioned, but also, what were some of your big highlights, some of your, favorite pieces to those seasons?
Well, I'll tell you my favorite thing to my senior year, because I still give this guy a hard time. Y'all know Spencer Strider, right? Plays for the Braves. He actually was in my district, and when I was a senior, he was a junior. I won District Pitcher of the Year over him, so I still keep up with him a little bit. So after he signed his $97 million contract, I sent him a little picture of my award, and I'm like, "Hey, you might have 97 mil, but I got this little thing."
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, just to give him a little bit, but no,
I
it's
love
one
the
of those
petty.
things. It's it's one of those things. He first off, he's unbelievable, and watching him in high school was just a different. It is different. He's a different breed of guy, and that's why he's doing the thing he is. But that was one of those things when I'm old and I'll be able to tell my kids that. And but that was one of the big things. But when I look back to my career, I look back to some of those games, like the no hitter against Catholic and the 14 strikeout games, just how much fun it was to pitch in those games, to pitch in big moments. And that's kind of when I knew I wanted to take college baseball seriously and succeed in it, because I love the idea of pitching in big games and big moments and being in those situations.
So at what point, was it one of those big games, or was there a particular instance, or was it just, a culmination of a really good season where colleges started reaching out and you go, oh man, this is a real thing. Like, I can play at the next level. Was there a moment, or was it just, after a good season, you got to sit down and kind of analyze the whole gamut of what was out there and then make a decision?
I'd say there was 2 moments. The first one's kind of after I got my first college call after going into my sophomore year, the summer. We're playing over. It's my first year with Diamond. We're playing over at South Carolina, and I don't even remember the team I pitched against. But we're at the University of South Carolina, and I ended up throwing a complete game, perfect game, 18 punchies, and it was one of those things where I was like, it was just like blew my mind. I was only 78, 81 at the time, but it kind of showed that I had the stuff to get it. I just had to put in the work. And I ended up getting my first call, I think the next week, from Tennessee Tech. And then it was like a trickle down effect. And then I guess when everything really started happening was World Wood Bat. The next summer, we're playing East Cobb Astros, and I ended up pitching 3, giving up 1 hit. And I ended up closing the thing out. We ended up losing 2-1. We'd given up 2 earlier, but it was kind of one of those things you see, like LSU commit, Mississippi State commit, all these different commits on that team. And you're like, man, you're pitching against great competition. You're pitching against guys that are going to be elite players. So
Was Pavoloni on that team?
What?
Was Pavoloni on that team?
Yeah, I think he was a little bit younger.
Okay. Because I remember him saying he played for them, and that would have been a cool little story considering y'all became teammates.
Yeah, that was he makes me so mad at the plate, because I had his number there for a little bit, and I think his last like 2 ABs is like a hard single and a home run. So and then I never got a chance to face him again.
So, that kind of, it's funny that you mentioned that, because East Cobb, obviously, we all know what they're about. And there's, a various number of East Cobb teams with various levels of college prospects on them. But when you go up against teams like that, how much fun is it to watch them just struggle to like pick you up, and like you just simply dominate those guys? And obviously it's kind of vindication for the work that you put in, but it's also got to be like very humbling on their part to to see, a guy outside of East Cobb, outside of their realm, just dominating them. So like I tip my hat to you, man. Like that's big time stuff. And you talk about Tennessee Tech coming in the mix, but you also talk about colleges just really being on the radar and it being a trickle down effect. So when does Tennessee actually come into the mix?
It was later that summer after I pitched against Team Elite and Coastal, and that was one of those things. I forgot to mention this. So the same summer, Coach Simcox, people call him Slim, who coached at Tennessee, was our summer coach. So Dave's there watching us, and Slim was my coach all summer. And he tells me all the time, because I still keep up with him, talk to him. He's a great dude. He tells me one of the biggest reasons that he offered me or committed me when he went back to coach at UT was because I was one of the grittiest players that he ever played with or ever coached. And that was probably one of the coolest just compliments I've ever got, because I like gritty, competitive. Those are two things that I believe that are controllable as the player. I think you can teach yourself to be competitive, you can teach yourself to be gritty. It's just who's willing to put in that extra effort, that extra work. It was one of those things I always worked my tail off, and that was why I think I was as successful I was in high school and college, because I think talent level, I tell people all the time, guys like Chase Dollander, Chase Burns, Drew Beam, those guys, their ceiling is so much higher than mine's ever would be. But I felt like I was able to get every little bit of it because I had that grit. And that was why Coach Simcox ended up talking Coach Serrano into offering me.
So, for you outside of that moment, Coach Simcox, reaching out to Coach Serrano, was it always Tennessee, or was there other schools where you were basically almost getting ready to commit there?
No, it was always Tennessee. It was one of those things. They offered me preferred walk on, and it was the dream spot. And it was I was just even blessed. I remember looking at the roster and counting, because they called me and they were like, we got to make sure we have enough room, and counting and seeing like who's going to leave, who's going to come back, and hoping I'd be able to even get a spot on the team.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. As somebody that kind of followed your career, all the way through, and Jim and I talked about this. It was like when you came in, it was always a feeling of relief for me, especially in your later years, but you didn't have that juice maybe that, obviously that Dolly has, Beam, Burns, those guys are just, even Cheese, with kind of little bravado. You were just you, man. But I mean, you played that part so well that it was just like a calming effect, man. And for one of the questions that I always wondered, you mentioned Simcox and Serrano. Obviously, coming in, you commit or whatever, and then everything kind of changes. Serrano gets asked to leave, and then obviously Vitello comes in, a name that I think people knew who he was. But I mean, what was that situation like? Once you commit, how do you stay there? Does he reach out to you and say, "Hey, we do have a spot," or how did that go?
That was completely different. So they pretty much told everybody at that point that, hey, everybody's coming back. It was the summer, so they didn't have any time to recruit their guys. So pretty much they were stuck with the Serrano guys and the Serrano commits. And that was kind of what was crazy about the next year. And from my perspective, that fall before Vitale and them got in, so the whole year before, I had Tommy John surgery. So he had no idea who I was. So I was out that whole year and still rehabbing when they got there. And it's one of my favorite stories now. At the time, I didn't even realize what was going on. But when him and Frank, Coach Anderson, got there, and I remember talking to him a couple times and whatever. And one day I go up to Coach Vitale, and I'm like, hey, man, I was like, I need to start throwing the live hitters again. He's like, okay, we'll get it figured out. Well, come later on, they end up telling me that they thought I was a manager up until that point, that I was just kind of on the sideline helping do laundry and stuff like that, and just kind of out there. And like I said, they didn't tell me that till like 2 or 3 years after that moment, but it's kind of funny to look back and see like that's kind of how my whole story went.
Yeah, and so for those obviously that follow it closely, and you guys, obviously Vitello gets a lot of the publicity, but just how good is Frank Anderson at pitching, especially coaching it?
It's different. You see some as a player, but now kind of being on staff and helping him and helping Richard, it's crazy to see some of the stuff he sees. People don't see the behind the stuff things he does, like doing a scouting report for another team, and how he analyzes a game, and how he's so good at not even just the pitching part of it, but he's good at coaching infield, coaching hitting, coaching the outfield. He sees the game from he's been there so long. One of the coolest things is just the other day. It was something with Dolanders working a bullpen on the Rapsodo, and Coach Anderson telling him like two little things, and next thing you know, his spin rate jumps up like 300 RPMs, and you're just like, how would you even like see something like that? It's just something where he's so savvy, and he's so been there so long, and he kind of has a great feel for people and a great feel for the game, that he's just that good, and he's never complicated with stuff. He's always very simple and very down to earth about it.
Man, he's really fiery too. Nobody's ever said that about him, I guess, huh? Yeah. So I actually got to see you guys this past week and the weekend before that in Jackson. I think that was like the longest game ever, 18 innings. It was just like, it was a marathon, not a sprint. But things were looking good, man. Hey, how was that crowd? Were y'all expecting that big of a crowd for that scrimmage?
We're expecting something, but I never would have thought that, especially for that place out in Jackson. You would think it's kind of the middle of nowhere.
I mean, Memphis pulls it in, man.
Memphis pulls it in. That's who was there.
I dropped the ball, Redmond. I actually forgot that I had requested tickets for that game, and then Booker's dad got them for me and Cameron James' dad, and then he calls me. He goes, "Hey, you ready to head up there Sunday?" And I was like, "Hey, I'm actually going to LSU Alabama Saturday. I'm not gonna be able to make it." Now, since LSU beat Alabama, no regrets. But had we got like shellacked and then I missed you guys, I'd have felt bad.
Hey, that LSU Alabama game was worth it, though.
Absolutely.
I don't think so, man. I chose you guys. But anyway, let's get into some of the time there. You mentioned kind of coming off Tommy John and everything. So you redshirt your freshman year. Just what did you learn throughout that process? And I guess you expected to get redshirted coming off the injury, or did you expect it?
Yeah, I expected to. And it was one of those things, when that injury hits, or any injury, you just kind of are in shock. And I tell everybody, you kind of go through it a little bit. I remember I came into college at 150. I get Tommy John, and the time I get to able to work out, I'm up to like 185, 187. And it's just like, you put all that weight, you can't do anything. And it's one of those things, you just don't know what to do with yourself. And luckily for me, though, I had people, even though we weren't very good at the time, we had good players on the team. And one of my favorite people that I always talk to, there's a guy named Garrett Stallings. He's with the Orioles now. And man, I got to watch how he just went, like his routines he had, how he worked every day, stuff like that. And I kind of got to formulate what I was going to do when I got back, and how hard I was going to work. And it was I tell everybody, it's like one of the biggest moments in my life, because I got to like plan out what I'm going to do for the rest of my life for 6 months. And that was like just enough encouragement, because I'm sitting there for 6 months watching people struggle, watching people go through it. And I'm like, man, I can't wait to be back.
Yeah, no doubt. So it's easy. Revisionist history. It's easy to look back and say, Tony Vitello comes in and kind of changes this with Frank Anderson and obviously Elander and everything. But coming in, I don't think he had this much hype. Nobody really knew what to expect. He was kind of taking over a program that had kind of fallen down. No disrespect to Dave Serrano at all, but there was some hype starts getting built. Could you have imagined that when you were told you're going to stay on, you redshirt? Could you have imagined the success that you saw in your time there when you committed there?
People don't believe me, but honestly, I do, because I remember sitting down with guys from our class, and even guys a little bit younger, the Evan Russells, the Andre Lipsiuses, Luke Lipsius, guys like that. And we used to talk about that all the time. And I think that was one of the reasons. I mean, it's a lot of stuff Coach Vitello and like instilled in us, just work ethic, time at the field, getting good guys around us. But I think it was something where, I think if you're a competitor, you think about these goals and you think about reaching Omaha. And if you don't, I think it's kind of just a soft mentality. But I think as a freshman class, we were pretty highly rated and highly talented. I think it was one of those things that we always thought that we had a chance to do it.
No, absolutely. So coming into your redshirt freshman season, you get 16 games out of the bullpen, pitching 17.2 total innings, led the pitching staff with a 2.04 ERA, and held opposing hitters to a 2.43 batting average. So for your first year seeing action, did you live up to your personal expectations? And how did that freshman year go for not only you personally, but for you guys as a team?
I mean, I think it went. I mean, it wasn't anything we wanted because that first year, now I'm thinking 2019, 2018, we didn't even make the SEC tournament that year. One of the hardest moments I always give Vitello is we go down to LSU that year and we played 3 games. We ended up getting swept, but in the Sunday game, we had like a 4 or 5 run lead in the 9th inning, and we ended up getting walked off. I was getting hot from the 8th inning to the 9th inning, and he pitched 3 guys before me. And I'm always, to this day, I'm just like, Coach, we would have won that game in the box if you just would have put me in. Just always giving him that. But it's one of those things where you look back to that season, and I think from a coaching staff, that's when they're like, we got to make some moves. We have to get some dudes in here because we had some talent, but we were just so weak in other areas. So we had to add talent to at least make us manageable at the time.
Well, as an LSU fan, man, shout out to Coach for not putting you in there and letting us get this.
Yeah, and also you talked about it, obviously not only was the talent, but the grit from guys like you and Evan Russell too. You know, obviously these guys come in. You guys were all super successful high school players, but you don't go from what Tennessee was to what you guys saw it go to without having talent, that work ethic, and that grit like you talked about. But going into your sophomore season, 2-2 record, and team leading again, even lower, 1.38 ERA, 48 strikeouts, 45.2 innings. But more importantly, you got a lot of action and had success against Ole Miss, Arkansas, and Mississippi State. So talk to me about what it was like to play. Those guys are obviously royalty of the SEC as far as historical. And now I guess you could say it up against Ole Miss for real. They actually have a title. So does Mississippi State. Now Arkansas still looking, but we'll talk about that in a second. But going through that gauntlet, what was that like for you, just pitching and having so much success against those guys?
And it's one of those things you look back at it and man, you miss that competitive nature, the little butterflies you get before you get on the mound and throw that pitch. But it's one of those things you'll never take it for granted because those are, like you said, the peak of college baseball and great atmospheres. And I remember that year, and it was one of those things we started growing up, just looking at those guys, like you said, as juggernauts of baseball. And then I think that's why we were still rebuilding at the time. I think we end up, I know we get swept by Arkansas and we take 1 from Ole Miss, but we a bunch of the guys would always look at those teams as a lot better than they were and give them way too much credit. And I think that was kind of why we weren't so successful. And as a team, as me individually, I think I had success because I never looked at them as these juggernauts. I always looked at them just another baseball player. And I think that's one of the things Coach Anderson tries to put in our heads. Hey, these guys are going to mess it up 30% of the time. The elite guys are going to mess it up. I'm not bad. They're going to succeed 30% of the time. That means they're going to mess up 70% of the time. And I think if you have that mindset, you're like, well, if I'm up there, I'm going to try to make them mess up 80% of the time or 10% of the time. And the next thing you know, you have a successful outing.
Yeah, and I think that on here, obviously, though, we obviously interview a lot of baseball players and we follow baseball really closely. And I think it got lost on a lot of new baseball fans the last couple of years. They looked at Tennessee, and we'll get into this in a minute, but as the villain and having this bravado attitude. But for me and Jim and DB, I think it's all the same, is that coming through the struggle that you guys did, and you're talking about it now, and how you were getting swept by LSU and getting swept by Arkansas, taking 1 from Ole Miss and looking up to them. That's kind of, do you think that's kind of when you guys took on that persona, like these guys aren't better than us, we're just as good, if not better than everybody in this conference?
Yeah, 100%. That whole villain mentality too started when Drew Gilbert got on campus. That
we understand.
Always talks about he would be out of a job without Drew. And somebody asked me the other day who my favorite player ever to come to Tennessee was, and it's Drew Gilbert. And this dude, best teammate I've ever played with. First off, him and Evan Russell, top 2. But he is a grinder, and he wanted the attention on him. He knew it. I saw something the other day. It was Steph Curry and Draymond Green last year in the finals, and Draymond's rattled on the court. So Steph has all the attention on him and starts kind of hyping up the crowd, trying to get the Boston crowd on him. That was Drew Gilbert. And he wanted that. He wanted all that attention. He wanted all the smoke, as people say. And he is unbelievable in so many ways. And I think that kind of led off into everybody else. You start getting guys like Jordan Beck, who's actually a pretty quiet dude who wants to be a villain. You guys like, I mean, Seth Stevenson, all
Luke
those guys.
Lipsius,
Yes,
finger touch.
all those guys start feeding off of that. So he was one of the huge building blocks of why the program is where it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got going into 2020. You guys get off to a hot start, but obviously we know with COVID kind of ruined the season kind of early. But that's kind of when Tennessee baseball, as far as the culture is what the world knew it as, kind of started to shock the world. And we've talked to a lot of your teammates, including we've had, Gilbert on multiple times, Evan Russell. He's like a family member of the show. And it's pretty unanimous to me and to us that across the board, you guys thought that was going to be your year to really be special. And I even think it was said on the show that they thought that team was more talented than the 2021
It was
team.
Pavoloni who was dead
Yeah,
set on that team.
It was the governor. He said that was going to be the best team. So do you follow that same train of thought?
Oh yeah, 100%. We had, you have Garrett Crochet, a first rounder who hadn't even pitched yet. Camden Sewell, who was hurt at the time too, is still a stud. Jackson Leith, who flies under the radar, is one of the better pitchers we've ever had, and he ends up getting hurt the next year. Alex Solari was just getting hot. He ended up being a second rounder. Zach Daniels was the hottest hitter in the country at the time. It was just like stuff, all those guys kind of clicking, and you didn't even get to see what Liam Spence was going to do or what Fergie was going to do yet, because we were so early in the year, but that team was stout and ready for a long run.
Absolutely. So that's what I would hate most about COVID, actually. But 2021, Tennessee goes 50-18, including a trip to Omaha. You make a career high 28 appearances, go 5-1, 5 saves, 2.52 ERA, struck out 40 and 39.1 innings pitched. So what is your confidence like as a guy, along with Sean Hunley, that can be relied on to just come in and shut it down? You talked about being an LSU coach if you had just put me in. How high is your confidence in that 50-18 season?
Oh, it's pretty high. It's one of those. You said the 15-18 season.
50-18.
Oh, my
yeah,
bad.
sorry.
15-18. No, it's super high. It's one of those things. Baseball is such an up and down sport, but I tell a lot of the guys, freshmen especially now, confidence, in my opinion, is 90% of baseball. I think if you have confidence up there at the plate, on the mound, you're going to be a lot more successful than you would if you didn't have any of it. Throwing a pitch is 90% confidence. If I believe I'm going to throw this pitch outside corner, heater away, I'm probably going to get it there. But if I have a little bit of doubt in there, I might miss glove side, might miss a little bit more arm side than I wanted. But for me, it was one of those things. I think I just always believed in my stuff. I mean, like I said, watching guys like Garrett Crochet pitch and Garrett Stallings, those guys just knew what they were going to do with their stuff. And they're going to give you this pitch with everything they got. And they kind of put that in me. And having confidence to pitch and watching guys like Hunley do it and knowing that if I mess up, I got somebody like that to pick me up, or vice versa, it's pretty comforting.
No, absolutely. So let's talk about the team and the postseason. And the first thing I want to ask you about is just what the difference is. And we talked to Vitello about this when he came on. From, his dad mentioned that his first time he ever saw Vitello coach at Tennessee, he counted the number of fans in the stands. And then to see what you guys did when you got to the regionals and the super regionals that year, what was that culture? Was it culture shock for you guys, or what was that atmosphere like day one to those super regionals and Wright State and those kind of games?
It's culture shock. That's the only way to say it. We had a midweek in 2018 JMU. We had 10 fans in the stands, and it blows my mind. It was 20 degrees or less than 20 degrees probably. And we ended up getting destroyed. I think we ended up getting beat like 15 runs against JMU in a midweek, which that's a different story in itself. But then you go back to, like you said, the super regional and the regional and the Drew Gilbert home run where you can't even hear yourself thinking there. It's culture shock. That's the only way to put it. It's so different. And it's crazy to see that you've built up something so much that people are coming out in masses, that people are in the parking lots having tailgates during the game because they can't get into the game. It's kind of cool to see that you built something from nothing in a way.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Drew Gilbert, you mentioned kind of the walk-off, but I want to know specifically for you, what was that moment like when he's going up to bat? We talked to him about it. What did he feel? And his honest opinion, he said, I didn't feel anything. I knew that I wanted to get, if I saw the pitch I wanted, so I was just going to swing. He goes, but honestly, I wasn't trying to hit a home run. And I'm like, Drew, I don't know if you're lying to me right now, because like that was an uppercut. That was Ken Griffey Jr. and the ball is still in orbit. So what's that like, that moment for you, man?
I think it was one of those things. I remember sitting there, or DH at the time, Pete Durcase standing. I just came out of I pitched the top of the ninth right there. He's up the bat at the bottom of the ninth. So I'm over in my spot. Pete Durcase next to me. We look at each other and we go, he's about to hit a home run right here. And next thing you know, he swings over the first one, hits the second one. I'm with you. There's no chance he's going for. He always messes like single up the middle, but no shot. That's a home run derby swing right there. And it was one of those things. Not many people, like, he's just that clutch. Take it back to a moment against LSU at home that year. Probably my worst outing of my career against them. I give up a home run to Cruz off the batter's eye, and I give up a home run to Gavin Dugas. Was it Dugas or yeah, I think it was Dugas off the batter's eye. So I'm like down bad. Game gets rained out. We're tied at that point. Drew Gilbert comes. No, we're down 8-7. Drew Gilbert comes up to me the next day after the game gets rained out. He's like, taps me on the chest. He's like, "Hey, I got you." Next thing you know, he hits a double, scores a run, and then his next AB up, he hits a walk-off home run. And that's just kind of the guy he is. He's a winner and a competitor, and that's why I have the utmost respect, and I think he's the most important player in Tennessee baseball history.
For what it's worth, Redmond, Dylan Cruz is the best player in baseball. You know, it is what it is. But hey, guys, I texted Evan and Drew in our group chat, and I told him what Redmond said, and Evan said Drew is my favorite player as well. And I said, well, Evan, you're mine, man. Forget Drew, even though that may not be true, because Randy will tell you that home run we're talking about. There's like 5 billion views on TikTok of it. I'm like 4 billion of it. I think I've watched it that many times.
True story, Redmond. As that happened, at the time I have a 4-year-old, so he was, you know, a baby, like a almost a newborn at the time. He's asleep in the chair next to me, and I'm watching it. And as soon as Drew, it comes off of his bat, I jump up, scream. Obviously, this kid, he's not even crawling yet, right? He jumps up in the air. I got to like catch him. But I regret nothing, Redmond. I regret absolutely nothing, because it was a clutch moment. But for you guys, obviously, that's a huge moment. Crowd's going crazy, TikTok viral, all that good stuff. But talk to me about the moment, not only that, but then you go on, you punch your ticket to Omaha. That moment, do you ever get to stop and just take in what this all means, or are you just so caught up in the moment you got to think about what's next?
I think freshman me would have been caught up in the moment, but I remember we win that thing and we go out to our like meeting after we do our dog pile and everything. And Coach Vitello just turned around. He said, take this in. And I just remember everybody looking up at the crowd and kind of seeing everything. And I mean, it's one of those moments you'll never forget. You'll always have that celebration going to Omaha, and just being with your boys. That's the thing that you start noticing. Those teams that you win a lot with, you're a lot closer. So like I said, I'm in this fantasy football league, and it's all guys that were on that 2021 team. And we text daily, usually just about how bad a trade was or how bad a team is. But it's one of those things. We were so close, and that's why we were so good, in my opinion. Is Liam Spence wanted to get a hit to help Fergie out, and I wanted to get an out to help Drew Gilbert out. And it was one of those things. Somebody always had somebody's back.
No, absolutely. So obviously, you guys come up short in Omaha, but for you guys and for you as well personally, but what did you learn as a team on kind of what it takes and that grind that it takes to not only be there, but to get some more wins?
Man, it's just one, having each other's back, and two, being hot at the right time. I thought it was one of those things. We played good all season, but you can tell from the Ole Miss team last year.
Oh yeah.
Who can say they're the best team in the country or not the best team in the country? I'll tell you one thing. In that span of the postseason, they were the best team, and there's no argument against it. So,
I'm going to tell you what right now. Hold on, man. Randy will tell you I've been at war on social media for a while now. I was at that Tennessee Ole Miss series. Even after they won it all, because they're red hot, I said, I'll lay my house, my car, and everything. We can put Tennessee back at Swayze the next weekend and give me Tennessee all day.
But who was it that came on here that said like Tennessee was the best? Well, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but this last year, there's like Tennessee was the best team. You know, but you're right.
It was DeLucia.
Yeah, DeLucia, right? This guy's he's the most outstanding player in the World Series, and we're on here, and he says, look, that was the best team in the country. Those guys were ridiculously good, top to bottom, pitching, hitting, everything. So, but Well, let's get into 2022. It's probably one of my favorite in Tennessee sports. I've been a Tennessee fan for my entire life, right? Since the early 90s. I'm a lot older than you are, Redmond. Don't take it out on me, though. It's all good. So 2022, you're no longer the hunter, you're the hunted now. With the 50 wins going to Omaha. And not only do you guys surpass that, but a 57-9 overall record. You yourself, you're 4-1, seven saves, 2.52 ERA, 40 strikeouts, and only 10 walks. So I got to ask about getting to toe the rubber. First thing, Minute Maid Park. Talk to us about what that experience was like for you.
And it was it was a dream come true for a guy that when I was 3 years old wanted to play in the MLB, get into play in Minute Maid, which I mean you get a historic team like the Astros who you watch all the time on TV. And luckily I got to do it on Saturday and Sunday, so I got to do it twice and pitching well there and just like tell my dad all the time. I was like, I swear the mound's better there. The atmosphere is better. The grass is even better there than anywhere else. And you just get a huge like adrenaline rush. And it's one of those things is you get to a sixth year like I was, you should always have a little bit of adrenaline, but some places give you a little bit more than others. And that was one of those places I was just ready to go, ready to get out the gates and ready to be on that mound.
How impressed were you by the Tennessee showing? Because I was there. Y'all had a lot of fans that came down there.
Man, Tennessee fans are the craziest.
That's true.
They're one of the people, and that's why you love them so much. You win, they love you. You lose, they love you, but they're gonna hate on you. It's one of those.
They'll let you know.
Love hate, and they'll let you know all about it. And that's why I'm always like Tennessee fans. That's why they're so great. Is they love Tennessee to a fault at times.
Passionate's the word.
Passion, yes, and they're just awesome in that way.
Look, fan is short for fanatic for a reason, Redmond. But I got to ask you a question. Obviously, you get to pitch against Oklahoma and Baylor, like you just mentioned. Obviously, Oklahoma ended up, getting to the final there. But so pitching against those teams. But I want to ask you a different question. That's kind of when the country gets introduced to Chase Burns too, is in the Shriners Classic. Talk about how impressed you as a pitcher and as a leader on this team. How impressed were you with the young cat at Minute Maid Park in that first game against Texas?
Oh, words don't describe it. The composure of him to be in that game in that moment. Because if you go back and look at his other starts, I think it's Georgia Southern, and maybe it was just Georgia Southern at the time. Maybe one over, maybe like a Rhode Island. But I mean, it's just some not out of conference, no Power 5. I mean, it's kind of low pressure. And then you come in and see him do it on the big stage. You see the sliders almost unhittable. I mean, I think it is unhittable. I think they only got a hit off a home run that night. It was a heater. And
yeah,
it was one of those things just to see how impressive he was and how dominant he was. You're like, man, I'm watching a first rounder right here.
No doubt. You mentioned earlier, you told Vitello that if he had just pitched you that you would have won the LSU game. And I said this, and I'm probably wrong. Vitello probably made the right call, but I texted Jim and DB at the moment. And I said, I think Vitello might have cost him this game. He pulled Chase a little early, but I understood it. Young guy, you want to save him. But man, it was so nasty. And to go up against a guy like he was going up against and maybe pitching as well, if not better, I was just so impressed because I knew who Chase Burns was, highly regarded recruit. But I can't tell you that I've ever been more impressed with a freshman coming and getting the start in that moment and being that good. And then not winning the game, though. So I think Vitello cost y'all. But anyways, let's move on.
You didn't tell him that when he came on here.
I didn't tell Vitello that. Well, no, we didn't get into that. I did tell Chase Burns that, though. So a lot of domination for you guys over the course of the regular season. I got to ask you, though, for you, Redmond, what was your favorite series or favorite outing for you?
I had to Ole Miss. I come in and pitch on Sunday. I think I punch out 5 of the 4 outs or something like that. We end up getting, Russell always gives me a hard time because he had 2 pass balls all years and they were both on me on changeups that cut that were both strikeouts. So one of those things he's kind of always bumping heads on that. But it was one of my favorites because, like I said, number 1 at the time, a sweep feels a lot better than just to win the series, especially on Sunday. And I come in, I think I punch out Gonzalez and I punch out Elko in the 8th, which Elko's one of my favorite players to ever play college baseball. He's just he's the nicest dude ever, and he's just had a great career. And him doing what he did in 2021, I was like, I'm a huge fan of this dude. But then
He's
coming
getting a
in,
statue, Redmond. I mean, you struck out the dude that's getting a statue.
And then the other guy he lists off is projected right now to be the number 2 overall pick. So I mean, no.
Very true. Studs
But-
on that team. Ole Miss was stupid
a lot
talented.
they were super talented, and you come in, and I think I get two or three in the next inning, and you're just like, it's just pretty cool to just kind of shut it down like that. Especially for a guy like me who, have a punch out or 2 a game, but never anything like that. Just kind of having my best stuff that day.
Absolutely. So we got a couple rules on the show, Redmond. Obviously we're big supporters of SEC baseball, college baseball in general, but we've never had a representative from 2 teams in the SEC, and that's Vanderbilt and Florida. And I don't think we're going to change that rule ever. So I was hoping you were going to say one of those, but I understand why you said the Ole Miss one personally for yourself. But you know what my personal favorite was?
Which one?
Sweeping Vanderbilt in Nashville. I loved it. Because, I mean, we talk about being the royalty of the SEC in baseball. I mean, I can't deny the success that team has had, that program has had, what Tim Corbin's been able to build. But their fans really, they really hate y'all.
Yeah, I remember looking out to right field. They had the big parking garage. And they just had all these banners up there, like just saying different stuff, like check the bat and everything, like anything you say about Jordan Beck. And those guys, they hate us. And that's one of the things I think is mutual for both teams, because you want to just beat those guys more than about anybody in the country.
Absolutely. So we talked about it already, but you guys you embraced the role of the villain, specifically Drew Gilbert, Jordan Beck, and those guys. Did you feel like that put more of a target on your back? Did it add any pressure, or was that something you guys welcomed?
I think for the most part, we welcomed it. I think we played better under it. I think we loved having guys' best games, because when we came out of it, we knew that they gave us everything they had for 9 innings, and that we were able to handle them, and a lot of times just punish them for 9 innings.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys, obviously, another one of my favorites. You get to the SEC tournament, and obviously the year before it was a big thing. You go back and forth with Arkansas; they end up taking it. But last year, you guys end up taking the SEC against my other hated rival, the Florida Gators. Just made it all the more better. But y'all start absolutely taking care. You win the SEC, take care of business in the regionals, super regionals, and it's well documented on this show. The one team I did not want you guys to face was Notre Dame. And it wasn't like I had a confidence issue with you guys' ability at all. I just felt like that was such a grown team, like that was a group of men, that it kind of worried me that they wouldn't come in and be intimidated by the environment. They wouldn't be intimidated by the bravado. So for you, as a veteran player yourself, kind of one of the older guys on the team, right? Were you fully aware of how good that team was going to be? Not that anybody took them lightly, but what was you guys feeling as Notre Dame's coming in for the regionals, super regionals?
Yeah, I think it was one of those things. We knew that we had a talented team coming in. I think we underestimated the talent, and we knew how mature that team was. You come in and they had 2 of the best relievers I think we'd seen all year, and a lineup who had hit some home runs, but nothing like they did when they got there. And I think it shocked us. They punched us in the jaw, and a lot of times all year we got punched. We were able to punch them back and kind of win the fight, but they punched us really hard that first game, and we were kind of scrapping, and losing Coach A and losing Drew. And the first game was kind of a dagger for us, because you have 2 guys who are just staples, and guys who are kind of comforting to us out, and guys that we can kind of lean on.
Redmond, I got to out my boy. You know what happened to me the Monday after Notre Dame put you guys out?
Man, hey, hold on. I know what you're fixing to say. I think it's my greatest thing I ever did as producer of this show.
So Monday night, we got a guest, and it's Jack Brannigan. So I got to get on here.
He only hit 3 bombs against y'all. No big deal.
I got to get on here and look this guy in the face that just put my team out, and damn near did it by himself on offense for some of those games.
Oh, yeah.
But let me tell you something, Redmond. He really countered it, because he was so nice. And all he said the whole time was that team is so good. That team was – I'm like, don't you patronize me, Jack Brannigan.
Randy was so upset, because going into the episode, he was ready to hate him.
Oh, man, I wanted to.
And then at the end of it, he's like, guys, I really want to hate him, but I just can't.
He was so humble and nice. like the opposite of me. I didn't like it at all. But man, it was tough. I just wanted to out Jim on that. But anyways, so we talk about the Notre Dame team, and that team the year before, it's been well documented. They went to Duty Noble, and Jack Brannigan even said that really prepared them for the moment at Lindsey Nelson, and that's how you kind of get that growing pain. So for them, you take them 3 games. You actually pitched the final inning. You guys ultimately lost, but reflecting back, how much fun was this season, and what did Coach V say to you guys after it was kind of over?
Yeah, it was one of those things. I think even for him, it took him a couple of days to even kind of formulate what to say, because there's not a right thing to say. The team was, and y'all said it, in my opinion, best team in the country definitely last year, but one of the best teams ever. The depth of the bullpen, the starting pitching, the lineup. I mean, even your reserves. I mean, you were switching between Blake Burke and Christian Moore as your DH, and Blake Burke had 10 batting 3 something, and Christian Moore is probably the most clutch player besides Drew Gilbert that I've ever played with. And you just kind of look at it and you're just like, you just don't know what, because you get punched in the mouth. And no, I don't think there was a guy on the team that expected us to lose that day. I think everybody thought, especially Chase Burns was pitching lights out all day. We had 3 great relievers, and Kirby, Sewell, and me all hadn't thrown all weekend. And you're just like, hey, this is our game to win. Their 2 best guys have already thrown, and you lose that game and you're just kind of lost for words and don't even know what's happening next, what's the next plan. And the final thing from Coach Vitello was that this team had put this program in a place for future success. Like, yeah, we didn't get to where we want to, but everything that this team has done has made Tennessee baseball better for the future. And that I remember him getting very emotional, and he's like, I promise you, he's like, I don't know how I'm going to do it or what, but every guy that's on here that hasn't been to Omaha, I'm going to find a way to get you back to Omaha. And he's just like, I mean, that's just him. He cares so much for each one of us, and he's just such a great dude that man, he was lost for words, and that was one of the few times I've ever seen him like that.
Well, you mentioned, he's gonna try to find a way to get you guys back to Omaha. Obviously the season ends. You go on to earn your bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering from Tickle College of Engineering. You completed your graduate certificate in engineering education in May of 2022. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of academics for you and why you chose that field of study.
Yeah, so for me, it was just something I wanted to do. I always loved math and science part of school, and I always liked a challenge too. I didn't realize what kind of challenge I was getting into when I did it. Didn't realize how demanding it was, but it was one of those things I always wanted to have. If baseball never worked out, I wanted to have something else to fall back on that I loved and something that inspired me, and that's why I ended up doing aerospace engineering. I wanted to work with, which I had a minor in mechanical. And I always wanted to do something, and that aspect of it, if it was building planes or working on boats or something like that, that was kind of my idea if baseball didn't work out.
So at that point, when you're saying, in case baseball doesn't work out, let me go ahead and let me finish this up. In your head, is that where you're leaning? Are you leaning to going out and going, all right, I'm going to go build planes. I'm going to go build boats? Or did you still have a yearning to do something with baseball?
Yeah, I had a yearning. I mean, I definitely kept my options open for the draft, but you got to be realistic to a point. Statistics are great, but when you start looking into it, you look at projectability in the draft, and you look for guys that are gonna be longtime big leaguers, and you look at my numbers from a analytical standpoint. I mean, my last year I was 83, 87, up to 89. Good changeup, decent curveball. Is one of those things I hoped I'd get a chance, but when it didn't happen, I was all right with it because I was comfortable with a fallback. But a reason I didn't go out and get an engineering job right away is because I did want to get into coaching. I wanted to see what was out there, and that's where this whole gig starts to happen.
So obviously you join, Tony V's staff. You're the volunteer quality control staffer. with a focus then on the pitching staff itself. So, that's a lot of words. Break down to me, like, what is that role and what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Pretty much what it is I help Coach A, and that was a lot of it. I wanted to get into, well, how it ended up happening was Coach Rotello, who, if he's listening to this, I'll say it live. He's a weirdo. He's just so off about some stuff. So I'm at home a couple weeks after the season, and he's just like, he texts me. He's like, "Hey," I'm just like, "What's up, Coach?" I don't get anything back for like a day or two. And then I get another text 2 days later, and he's like, "We can't lose you." And I'm just like, he's like, text me like my ex-girlfriend or something. It's just like, it's like coded. Like I'm trying to figure it out. But anyways, he ends up giving me a call that same day, and he's just like, "Hey," he's like, "You mean too much to the program. You mean too much to me and Frank. We want to try to keep you around. We want to try to find a way to keep you in the program, especially knowing that this team this year is so talented, but at the same time, very, very young. I mean, you lose so many guys from that team. And at the same time, he knows that I want to get into coaching. And I mean, there's not a better place in the country to do it than under that coaching staff. And what I do over there now is I help coach. A lot of times I help Coach Anderson with the analytical part of it. So setting up Rapsodo, going through data, watching video, helping Richard with some of the on-field stuff, and just kind of whatever task needs to be done.
So, as when you look at the comparison of age there, does you being a young cat help when it comes to the analytics and the technology and the availability of things like that that's out there? And like, not so much showing Coach A how it works, but really like analyzing what it means.
Yeah, for the most part, I think a lot of it too. He knows some of the numbers. He doesn't care about some of them too, but just kind of having somebody there to at least help him with some of the stuff that honestly he doesn't need to do. He's been through so much. When you go through his career, which could be a 3-hour podcast, but just kind of help him with some of the BS that he doesn't even need to be doing because of how prestigious he is kind of really what it is. And for him just to have certain parts of the data that he can look at and make changes instantly just by seeing it.
So, with this, is this a job where you're going to travel with the team, or are you going to stay in Knoxville on a day-to-day basis?
I'll be traveling with the team.
And with the traveling, man, I got to ask, there's obviously, you're a newlywed now. There's probably a family at some point. How is this next step, are you adapting well to it? Are you feeling like it's a little bit more difficult than you thought? I mean, being that it's a little bit of the same because a player is doing a lot of the same things, but really, I guess the pressure, to win at a high level is now there, as opposed to a player. It's just automatically ingrained. You're going to go out there and perform. Now it's like, well, if you don't perform, like, you're going to be moving somewhere else.
No, it's definitely it's a learning curve, and that's kind of why I wanted to get into it, to see if college coaching was for me. It was one of those things, like I said, if there's a place to do it, there's not many better places than Tennessee right now, and the opportunity was there. But yeah, it's one of those things. Just figuring out the time commitment was the biggest part of it, because you're there a ton as a player, but you're there a lot more as a coach, and it's crazy to see. But it's also cool to see guys like Coach Anderson and Frank and Elander and Vitella, all those guys, how much time they really do spend. Like, I think the highest of Coach Elander, any recruiting coordinator in the country, just because I see it on a daily basis. The man has a awesome wife and a 4-year-old kid, and he is on the road as much as anybody, and he is helping throw BP till 7, 8 o'clock at night when he has to. And he is always doing something to help the team get better. And that was the craziest part, is the thing you start to notice, and why we weren't successful in 2017 and why we are successful in 2021, 2022, is just how much time these guys spend with these kids. And I mean, it really is your family. You spend more time with them over the last 5, 6 years than you do your own family. And that's why they've been so successful. And that's why I kind of got into it and kind of starting to see now that you think it's this much time you put into it, but it's actually this much time. And that's how you become successful.
Well, I absolutely think you have one of the coolest jobs. I mean, you talk about that whole staff, but specifically, I mean, Tony V. I'm not a Tennessee fan, but I think he's the coolest coach in America in every sport across the board. And then when you look at the arms you're working with, we've talked about it: Dolander, Burns, Beam, Sewell, Kirby, all those guys. So like, just the idea that you get to still be a part of that culture, be a part of that coaching staff, and work with those arms, man. Like, sky's the limit, I think, especially again this season. And so we expect big things. But with that, we're gonna get off the hot seat, so to speak, and put you on a different one. We're gonna play a game called This or That. You down to play?
Yeah, I know how to play.
You know how to play? Are you sure? All right. Yeah. The rules are, though, you can't say neither or say both. You gotta be decisive in your picks. All right. So first one out the gate, easy one. You a beach guy or a lake guy?
Beach guy.
All right, you're gonna hit the beach down there on the honeymoon, right? Like Orlando isn't exactly by the beach, but a couple hour drive, you can hit it up.
Yeah, we'll find one. We'll find one down there.
I mean, he'll be in the Keys after that. I mean, there ain't no. That's all that's there.
You're on the beach.
Yeah.
All right, it's a tough one for you. What's more iconic, Kirby's stash or Ben Joyce's fastball?
Oh, Kirby stash.
Oh, he had no problem. Is that because that's one of your fellow pitchers? Is that, or well, they're both pitchers.
Yeah,
What am I
Ben
talking
Joyce
about?
is
Yeah,
too.
yeah. I don't know what I was thinking.
I have to go Kirby stash because, and he'll admit it. It was 50% my idea. I'm the guy that bought the wax for it. I'm the guy when he started talking about it, but I kind of helped him with it. So,
Hey man, I got a question. I'm gonna interrupt this, but at the scrimmage, I saw, is it Zach Joyce, Ben's younger brother, or is he younger?
yeah,
It looks like the same dude from a distance.
he's insane. He threw again today, and his arm. He's not 105, but I mean his stuff is. He's got 4 pitches, and he's pretty electric.
You know how I botched that, Randy? It actually was originally Jordan Beck's hair, but Beck never gets chosen, so I figured I'd switch it up and throw Ben Joyce's fastball. So that's why I actually said as a pitching guy, because normally it's Beck on the other end. But anyway, so Kirby beats. Yeah, so Kirby's beating everybody. So clearly, I got to take Kirby out this question for the Tennessee guys. We got to move on past him. So if you can go to any concert or any sporting event, bucket list concert, bucket list sporting event, what are you picking, a concert or a sporting event?
Whoa, sporting event.
What's the sporting event? Where are you going?
I want to go to. I want to go watch Yankees Red Sox Fenway, but in the postseason. That's like the dream. See that atmosphere.
Who you want to come out on top?
Depends on who's pitching that game I'm watching.
I got you. Not a bad choice at all. All right, now we're gonna get Beck in the mix. Who hits better bombs, Drew Gilbert or Jordan Beck?
I got to go with Gil. That's my man.
All right. So with that choice, could Gilbert beat Blake Burke in a home run derby?
No,
Not a chance.
Gilbert would never ever admit that.
Man, I've seen Blake Burke flip things out, and it's just like that man's built different.
Yeah, and then when they put those videos of the swing view of him and Ken Griffey Jr., which is interesting because they're built so differently, but it looks identical. It's like, my God.
And he thinks he's built like Ken Griffey, though.
All right, so we talked about embracing the villain thing, but we've had some of your teammates don't necessarily prefer to be the villain. Would you rather be the hero or would you rather be the villain?
I'd rather be the hero.
Who's your favorite superhero?
Thor.
Thank you. A Marvel guy. These guys are all about the Batman. I'm so glad, Redmond, you're my guy. All right. This one's gonna be tough. Maybe. Who's smarter, you or Luke Lipsius?
It's Luke. I tell him all the time. I tell him he's the reason I passed engineering. So I hope my professors aren't listening to this, but most of my good grades are because of him.
The truth comes out. Luke's been doing the homework. All right, so this one's a tough one for me. As a non-Tennessee guy, I think y'all have the best uniforms in sports across the board. But, whether we're talking about baseball or football, better uniform, the smoky grays or the dark mauve blacks?
The blacks might be my favorite. I mean, even the pitching the SEC championship with them, that's one of the coolest moments. So those Blacks are pretty sick.
I thought the Blacks were my favorite, but when y'all came down to LSU in football, I was there for the game and beat our ass in those beautiful gray uniforms. I actually think that had something to do with it. I think that's the reason why y'all beat us so bad. Those uniforms were just awesome.
No, they are.
Last question, man. Tough one. Would you rather have massive success on accident or modest success on purpose?
I'd go, man. You gotta say that's a tough one. That's the best one. Man, you gotta go massive success on accident, right? It's one of those things. It's like I feel like modest success would go fine to the way our massive success would end up having a better result or a greater result.
Yeah, Randy has the best way of putting it. Go ahead and put it down, Randy.
Yeah, man. So Redmond, I think you're a smart guy, even if Flips just was doing your homework. If I was to give you two options, I'm going to give you $100 million or you can earn $20 million. Which one are you going to take?
The 100 mil.
Of course, every time. But a lot of times lately, it hasn't been happening as much. But when we first started asking the question, everybody, let me earn my 20. Let me earn my 20. And I'm like, all right, well, now I got $80 more million because you want to be a dummy.
Mm-hmm.
Just take the 100 mil.
Yeah.
If somebody's going to give it to you, just take it. That's it. No shame in that at all. Redmond, man, it's been a pleasure, dude. Anything you want to plug or promote before we let you roll?
No, I'm just grateful to be on here. Thank y'all so much for this.
Absolutely. You know, I always am prepared just in case you guys don't say anything that you want to plug or promote. So if you're hearing this and you want to know what Redmond Walsh does on just a random Tuesday, or maybe what he's going to do at Disney this weekend or in the Keys, go on over to Instagram at Redmond Walsh. You'll see his day-to-day in picture story form, and it's beautiful, man. It's a great sight. Or if you want to just follow him on the diamond, see him in his coaching fatigue and what it's like in his new role, going over to at Vol_baseball. Check them out. Stay in the loop. Know what the Vols are doing because it's going to be a spectacular special season. Redmond, man, we wish you nothing but the best. If there's anything we can do for you along the way, please reach out to us, brother.
Oh, for sure. Thank y'all.
Absolutely. That's Redmond Walsh, everybody. We're going to take a quick little break. When we come back, we're going to do headlines.